Hey friends, welcome to the Fierce Calling podcast, where I am talking with guests who are taking action where their passion, compassion, and conviction intersect. That is the definition of a fierce calling, and it's to encourage, inspire, and challenge other women to take action where their passion, compassion, and conviction intersect. Today we are talking about where faith, fun, and family intersect with Valerie Ellis. There's that word intersect again. I love that word. You are listening to episode 215. And before we get into the show, we are going to be at the Florida Women's Ministry Leadership Conference. I am a speaker there on Saturday, October 18th, 2025 in St. Petersburg, Florida. I'll be speaking along with 17 other Christian women speakers who will be sharing fresh practical ideas with women's ministry leaders in the state of Florida. And if you are a women's ministry leader in Florida, or maybe you lead in your church, lead women in your church or in a group, we want to have you come. It's a safe interdenominational place where you'll feel loved and encouraged and equipped. And you'll also meet other leaders in women's ministry while you are there. And so details will be in the registration link in the show notes. You can go to wmconfs.com and you can still grab a ticket for that. Hope to see you there, friend. I'd love to meet you. And yeah, so we'll get into the show with Valerie. You're going to enjoy this so much. I love my conversation with her, and I know it will encourage, inspire, and challenge you. What is threatening to steal your joy? What is it that feels so heavy right now that you could barely stand? God has a plan, and His plan is to surrender it. Surrender it to Him. It might be a prodigal. It might be a relationship, a marriage, something with your job. So many things. We have so many amazing blessings. But there are so many things in our life that threaten to steal our joy. I'm Doris Swift, author of the award-winning 6-week Bible study, Surrender the Joy Stealers, Rediscover the Jesus Joy in You. And it helps women rediscover the overflowing, ever-present Jesus joy within. Using personal and biblical stories, I share how you can identify your joy stealers, surrender them to God, reawaken the joy within, and share the joy with others. You can do it on your own or with a group. Check it out, friends. Surrender the Joy Stealers. Rediscover the Jesus joy in you. It's available on all the online retailers. It's time to take your joy back. Welcome back to the show. Today, I am excited to welcome back a good friend of mine. She's been on the show actually twice before, so this is exciting. Valerie Ellis. She is an author, speaker, and founder of Our Everyday Parables, which is a multi-author site for families filled with amazing resources and book reviews and things like that to help families navigate, and find good resources for where their faith and fun intersect. She's also a certified teacher, and she writes books that serve kids in that intersection of faith and family and fun. And I love that because that's, fierce calling, the intersection where your passion, compassion, and conviction intersect. So that word intersect is near and dear to my heart. She's also a nonprofit consultant, and she is a trainer and grant writer, so that's cool. And she lives in the Houston area with her husband and their 2 boys, and she's written some amazing books. We've talked about a few on the past episodes. I think she was episode 106 and 168. So it was a little spread there. So we're spreading it out a little bit. But it's so great to have her on. She has several different books. One of them is Let's Go Bible Adventures, Real Bible Stories for Kids Who Love Trains, Tractors, Ice Cream Trucks, and more. And she has a book also that we talked about. And since we're getting near the Christmas season, it'll be a cool one to kind of bring back up to the forefront. Share the Joy, a Christmas Lift the Flat book. I don't know who doesn't like Lift the Flat books, because I love those. And her new devotional, which will be coming out October 7th, but by the time this episode comes out, it will be available. And it's Wild Faith Devotional for Kids, 52 Amazing Animals That Point to One Great God. And I love this book so much. It's filled with fun and fascinating animal facts. It's very unique, and I've learned a lot of stuff from it already. So it's so great to have you back on the show. Welcome, Valerie.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Doris. I just love chatting with you. So I'm thrilled about what we're going to talk about today.
Thank you. Me too. It's always so fun to have you on. We go way back. We met through a book membership program called Book Camp. Yeah, Chad R. Allen, and he has, coaching for writers and, helps writers get their books into the world, basically, is kind of part of what his tagline is, helping us get books into the world, which he has. And so we're kind of proof to that.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I'm excited to get into this conversation and talk about where your passion I can't even talk. Your passion, compassion, and conviction currently intersect through the writing and the things that you have going on right now, Valerie, since we last spoke.
Yes. Well, I am, I guess, a little bit at loss for words because I have so many passions. And so it's like, well, how do they intersect? I mean, starting with family, of course. Honestly, I wouldn't have written any children's books if it hadn't been for my own kids. And I know that's not everyone's path, but my first book idea was the Let's Go Bible Adventures, even though it was the second one that came out. And so when I had that idea, it just wouldn't let me go. And it was because my kids loved vehicles so much when they were little. And in fact, it was hard pressed to get them to read any other kind of book. So it got me thinking about how to integrate the modern things kids love with the true Bible stories. And we can get more into that later, how we kept it biblically sound and things like that. But that kind of started that journey. And then integrating that with parents. The parenting journey is just full of highs and lows and everything in between, and just the compassion that I've had to learn toward myself, and the compassion that I have for other parents, and just trying to support them, get ideas out there for them, for other caregivers like grandparents, aunts, and friends that, children's ministers. And so currently been doing some speaking to parents, to children's pastors and teachers, just about reading, about helping kids find God in the everyday moments. And then, of course, bringing the books straight to the kids, which I get to do now, like at school visits and things like that, has been such a blessing. And to see their reactions to the illustrations. I don't illustrate my own books, so just seeing their reaction to all the lovely illustrations and the rhymes and just the different things. So I'm excited. Like you said, Wild Faith isn't out while we're talking, but it will be out by the time this airs. So I'll be excited to get into some other classrooms for older kids, because that book is for kids 7 and up. And my other books are more for preschoolers and kindergartners, that kind of age. So I'm excited about what's ahead, and just grateful that God has let all these passions intersect.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love how, they do cover different spans of age groups, and that the schools and churches are so open to having you come and share your gifts. And, being a teacher, I mean, you have great credentials to be able to do those things. And these books, it's so cool though how God works in his timing. And we talk about timing a lot on this show because it's so relevant to everybody, God's timing, and how you had this one book that you thought was going to be your book, that was going to be the one to come out. And then it actually, was it the Christmas one that came out first, right? Yeah. So yeah, if you can mention a little bit about that, because we're getting, here the Christmas season is upon us. So maybe share a little bit about that as kind of a recap, because I'll put the link in the show notes to the previous episodes, because we talked in length about that book. But yeah, if you want to just kind of touch on that one, I'd love that.
Sure. So this is Share the Joy, if you're watching with a video or something, but Share the Joy, a Christmas Lift the Flap book. So like you said, it has those flaps that are just really fun for kids, and it talks all about caring and sharing at Christmas. So basically helping the littlest ones get that in their excitement, in their muscle memory about serving to honor the greatest servant of all. Jesus came to be born and came to show us God's love. And so at Christmas, sometimes that part can get crowded out the most easily. So, of course, with kids, you're not going to lecture them or tell them all the woes of the world and materialism, but rather just help them, from that very young age, just be like, oh, this is what we do at Christmas. We care for people, we share. This is like ingrained in our family culture. And so that's why I wanted to write a book about that for the littlest ones, because I remember Christmas books, even from my childhood, still influence like my Christmas traditions and things like that. So each page shows like a child doing something, a Christmas tradition, and then you lift the flap and there's a bit of a surprise because they're using that tradition to share with someone or to talk about Jesus. And so it's just a really fun way. And I've loved that it's been like checked out from our local library all year long because of the flaps. Have to give the credit to the flaps.
Yes.
Kids love that. So it's a really good way to engage the kids. And so that's what I try to do with all my books is think about things kids already love, just so it will be an easy win for parents and grandparents to be like, let's read about the Bible, because that's one of the things I wanted to do with my kids. And sometimes that I didn't always get my way and they wanted their books. So I was like, well, let's make it a win-win with the car book, the animals, and then of course, like you said, the Christmas lift the flap.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the fact too that it's in the library and people can check it out, because there's just like a lot of families that may not have the budget to buy books,
Right.
all the time. And so it's great that it's available there. And, even nowadays you can go on like different apps for your library and get books that way and not even walk into a library. Because I drive past our library every day, and I just was commenting the other day how long it's been since I've actually walked into the library, and I love the library. I don't know what's wrong with me or why I haven't been back, but anyway, I need to do that. We used to even rent like DVDs
Right.
from the library, which people still
Yeah.
do. Check them out or whatever.
Right.
Not rent, but check them
I
out.
love that you brought that up because, that's part of our mission with our everyday parables. And I think maybe with my nonprofit background, just thinking about like not everyone can afford to bring books into their home. And so one thing that you can do as like a Christian person on mission who cares about your community is request Christian books at the local library. So, I mean, I feel like that's how Share the Joy got in these places, is because people around the country thinking about like, what books do I want just children to find in my community, and happen upon that are like, oh, this is a fun lift the flat book. And then they encounter Jesus. And so that's something that most libraries have set up that you can do online. It's just a really good way to be missional. But then also thinking about, we do a lot of book recommendations on our everyday parables. And a lot of them are not necessarily Christian books. They're books that you can easily find at your library. And so we show parents and caregivers how to use those books to talk about faith, even if the book isn't necessarily about Jesus. There are word pictures, or there are situations, or there are values that you can use to talk about faith with kids. And so that's just a way that if you don't have all the money to buy all the books you want, it's a way that you can still bring up those conversations in those fun ways for kids.
And I love that your site does that, everyday parables, because you're vetting these books for families, you're going through them and you're not recommending anything that's going to have kind of off messages that don't line up,
Right.
with our values, Christian values. And like you said, even though it's not necessarily always going to be a Christian book that you recommend, it's not going to have anything in there that's going to conflict with our Christian values. So I think that's important for families, just for some guidance there in that department, because there's so much out there now. It's like, so it's good to have some wisdom in that department. And so, yeah, I'm glad we touched on that, because it makes a great gift. It's evergreen. You could do it every year, and it's fun. We've had those books that our kids might have wanted us to read all the time that we didn't really love that much. And it was like, oh, that book again, But, you know. so so it's fun to have books that, adults also enjoy, and how you incorporate fun for, the importance of adults also
Um,
experiencing that kind of fun when they open your books. And they are beautifully illustrated as well as beautifully written. So that's cool. So, if you could talk a little bit about like when the book came out about the Bible adventures, and I especially said before we started recording that I love that you included the ice cream truck, because that's something nostalgic even for all of us.
mhm.
I was telling you that we had two different ice cream trucks in our neighborhood that would come around. We had the Pied Piper, and then we had the Good Humor truck. So
Yes,
there was one we kind of liked better than the other, but either one we would take.
sure.
And at that time, you could find, like, I don't know, even I said a quarter earlier, but I probably could have found a dime or something in the sofa, and that would have been enough to buy something, but I mean, not anymore.
No,
But anyway,
yeah.
so if you want to kind of talk a little bit about that, and also because you mentioned earlier, and I think this is very important, how difficult or what was the process like incorporating the biblical truth into the books and making sure that it was biblically sound and fun
Right,
as well.
right. Yes. So when I had the idea for Let's Go Bible Adventures, and I'll hold that up too, I so here it is, so beautifully illustrated with the cars and trucks on the front, but then the biblical characters in their biblical dress, which, as a parent, if I were to see that in a bookstore, I might have a little bit of cognitive dissonance, like, this does not go together. What is happening? And so when I had the idea, I knew I wanted to keep it biblically sound because that was the whole point, was to teach kids the Bible. I didn't want to have to like reteach them when they're older or introduce something into the story that wasn't really there. And so for a minute, I was like, I think this isn't going to work after all. But then I thought, kids love when we're silly. Like when you're asking silly questions, it really can get their buy in. Like, do these PJ pants go on your head? No. Do they go on your arms? No. Where did oh, they go on your legs? And so that's kind of the take we have with this book. So it introduces the character and their problem on the first spread, and then it asks a silly question. So, like, here's Jonah. He's running away from what God's called him to do. And it's all in rhyme, but I'm not going to say it in rhyme right now. But basically, the silly question is he's in the ocean. Did God rescue Jonah with a submarine? Like, what did God do? And so then the kids get to be the smart ones and they're like, no, no, that's silly. And so when I'm doing classroom visits, I'll coach the kids. I'll be like, now, this is when you say how silly that is. That's ridiculous. And they love to do that. And so then we turn the page and we see what really happened. Like, no, that wasn't it. This is what happened. God sent a big fish to rescue Jonah. He told the Ninevites about God. And they all turned their lives over to God. And it was an amazing miracle. And so there's a takeaway, like a biblically sound takeaway that's perfect for their age. And then it ends with a refrain that every refrain ends with, we're on an adventure with God. Let's go. And so by the time you've read 2 or 3 stories, they're saying that part with you, which was kind of the idea. And then it's just fun because, as parents or grandparents, you're going about your day, you're going to see these trucks. You're going to see the ice cream truck. You're going to see the garbage truck and the bulldozer and all of these things. And so then you can even like remind about the story. Like, remember when we had read that silly story? And is that what God did? Like, no, this is God, you know, plan and God's love for you. And so it's been really fun. It's been really fun to watch kids like really pick it. And I've had parents say like every night that's what they want to read. Or one mom said, we got the package. I was in the middle of making dinner and my child asked to open it. So I was like, okay, even though I'm really busy. And then they wanted to read it so much that I couldn't pass up on that opportunity. So I just paused the dinner. We read the entire thing because they were just so excited about it. And she's like, even my little one who doesn't like books came over and like sat with us and read it. So, I mean, things like that have been great because that's the whole point, is just to get kids interested in God's word and provide that introduction where then parents can go deeper. And each story has the scripture reference. So if parents want to look up the real story and see, more of the details, because I know a lot of us are learning these stories along with our kids, right? Some people weren't
Hmm.
raised in church, or they weren't, discipled in that way, or they just forgot. I mean, there's so
Yeah.
many things, honestly, that I'm like, was that this or that? I don't remember. And so it's great to be able to look up that passage. So,
Yeah. And I like that you brought that point up, that not every adult was raised in a Christian home or was raised where they were familiar with these Bible
mhm,
studies and Bible stories and all of that, because maybe they never went to Sunday school or, anything to do with children's ministries or VBS or anything like that. So it's good that they can also learn as they read, and the fact being that when kids see these cues when they're out in everyday life, which is what your heart is, for kids to make those connections for everyday moments,
right.
that God is with us every moment, and just reminders when they see one of these vehicles, or and
Mhm.
how it will click, and how it's a great, like, teachable moment to talk about, oh, well, what does that remind you of? What Bible story did we talk about that you saw this truck in, or whatever? And especially when kids are in the car, because it's like captive audience time.
Yes.
And so that's really cool. And I love that so much. And how you did incorporate the truth into all of it and made it fun
Mhm.
for the kids. And it's so great too, because like you were saying, that kids love these types of vehicles and things like that. And it reminded me too of how VBS has a
Mhm.
theme usually, every year. And there's, like, I don't know, every church in the area has a
Mhm.
VBS during the summer usually. And a lot of families go from one VBS to the other. So it's good to kind of coordinate when your VBS week is, so that it's not at the same time as other churches, so that kids can have like a span across the whole summer of, hearing God's word. But then the themes, are
Mhm.
fun, and just to kind of connect that to everyday life, and like, how does this all connect, and how can I, learn more about God through my everyday activities and things like that.
Right.
So I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
uh, your newest book, how did that come into play? And if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And I think I named one of the animals that maybe we could talk about, that you cover in the book.
Yes. Yeah, so it's the Wild Faith Devotional for Kids, and it is 52 animals, like you said at the top. And so here's the cover. So it is,
Beautiful.
it came about because, as I was writing Let's Go, I was also thinking about just other ways to minister to parents and kids. And I had this notebook and I just laid it out on my, somewhere I walked by all the time on my counter, and any idea I had, I would just jot down. And my brain thinks in analogies. So this book really was like a dream come true for me, because I got to make all of these connections between the animal traits or behaviors and how we can approach the Christian life, with that as our inspiration. So at the top, you meant, or at before we started recording, you mentioned the sloth, which I think is such a great one. And so, just as an example, the sloth, we all know, is very slow, and kids are really loving sloths right now. And so they move very slow. They, especially on land, they're a little quicker in water, but it's not because they're lazy. It's not because we need to think of them as that way. They have a very slow metabolism. And so moving slowly is just the right speed for them. And so we talk about in the devotion how, we go at different speeds throughout our lives, but we can't always just go fast. We have to take time to slow down, because that's how we were made, to take time. Sometimes we are moving quickly and sometimes we need to slow down. And so it just helps kids think about, like, how can I take some more time to think about God and just meditate on him and give some practical tips? And then a fun fact about the sloth, and I have to look it up. I'm like, what is the fun fact that we said about the sloth? Because there are 52 of them. Let's
Yeah,
see.
that's what I love too about the book because you have fun facts that are very fascinating. Things like I didn't know that,
Yeah.
and some people might, but some people might not. And it's like, like the catfish, how it can taste all over.
That's one of
It
my
has like
favorites.
sensories
Yes.
all over its body.
Yes, yes.
That
I
was
know
really cool.
catfish aren't the most like trendy animal, but that is one of my favorite devotions because I love the verse, taste and see that the Lord is good, that we link. And so how
Mm-hmm.
the catfish does have, like you said, taste buds all over its body to sense that, and we can grow in how we sense God around us and remember that he is good. So here each devotion has an illustration and a photo, which I am so excited that the publisher Waterbrook was able to do that. Jen Bricking was the illustrator. She's amazing. And so then each one also has a make it stick, which is kind of like, let's take a minute and think about what we just read, because I know my kids, they like to just read it, close it, then they're done. But it is that thinking, that meditating and thinking about how to apply it to our lives, or maybe how it has already applied to our lives. Think back to something God has done for you. So this one says, for the sloth, it says, relax your body and take a slow, deep breath. Thank God that he's designed us for a peaceful, healthy pace. So it just takes less than a minute, to do that, but it's something that can help kids kind of ground that in their hearts and minds. And then there's a live it out. So with this one, it says, ask your parents to help you set an alarm to go off once a day this week so the whole family can pause to pray and remember the restful peace of Jesus. So a fun thing, and families can, tweak it to fit their schedule, but something that the kids can do and kind of lead the family maybe and be like, hey guys, this is something important. Let's do this together. And then the fun fact is sloths spend up to 90% of their lives upside down. They can eat, sleep, and even give birth this way. So, yes.
Wow. Oh, that is very relatable. I think sometimes we feel like we're moving slow and we're upside down.
Right?
It's like so fun.
Definitely.
And how you incorporated into these are principles that adults need too.
Mm,
So that's cool. And these make great gifts. And so you could do it with your own kids, your grandkids, your nieces, nephews. You can give it as gifts for baby showers,
mhm,
different things like
mhm.
that, which is fun. Although this particular devotional book is geared to a little bit older child than your previous books, which I love too, because it brings in kind of a different demographic because some of the kids, in families are different
Right,
ages. So there's something for everybody,
right.
but we can all learn from that. And it kind of reminds me too, which is another reason why I love, I love talking about the sloth. When I was riding my youngest grandson to school one morning, and he's in his last year of middle school now,
Mm,
so he's kind of grown and doesn't need Gammy as much or to ride him to school or whatever. But we were riding one day. I picked him up from his house, and his neighbor was a little older lady, and she was walking down her driveway. I don't know if she was going to put mail out in the mailbox or something. And I said, Hunter, it looks like your neighbor's moving a little slow this morning. Maybe she's not feeling so good. Maybe we can pray for her. And, maybe she's having a hard day today. And so he said, well, that's what old peoples do. They move slow, like a sloth.
oh, goodness.
It's like so funny. Which, of course, I mean, it wasn't meant to be like sarcastic. He wasn't being unkind. That was just like how his mind
The
thought
connection. The
about like
connection is there.
old people move slow. Hey, so we can all slow down,
Yeah.
even young people. But anyway, so that's why I love how you have these principles in your books too. So like we said, this one is already out. So if you're looking for some great gift ideas for Christmas. These books make wonderful gifts. And also to, like you said earlier, voice your opinion about what books you want in your library. You know, you have a voice. You can actually request things like that and ask for that. And even in local bookstores and things like that. So, and I love that you go and you talk to the schools and you talk to the youth pastors, the children's pastors, you know, kind of thing, and bring these books to life and just have a reading time. I mean, sometimes we might look for things to do, especially if maybe someone out there listening right now is an empty nester. I always like to say our nests are full. They're not really empty,
Right?
but
Yes.
but I mean, that is the definite term when your kids are grown and out. Or maybe you've just retired and you're looking for some things to do. You could volunteer and have, like, you know, maybe a story time at your library or a local bookstore or something. And I'm sure that they would be open to having people do that. And I have to say, I love rhyming books. Some people, you know, they have different opinions about rhyming books, and I love rhyming books. I just think it's so fun. And it keeps me going, you know, especially when the kids were younger. I always loved, and the grandkids too. I loved when we had rhyming books because it was just fun for me and it didn't get boring. And I could read the same book over and over because I like the rhymes.
Yes,
So,
yes, they are fun.
but yeah, they're so fun. And, you know, Valerie, I know we, as being in book camp and other book type conferences we've been to and things like that, we usually hear that the statistics of people who feel like there's a book in them are pretty high. You know, there's a lot of people out there who feel like, yeah, I think I want to write a book. And there's a lot of people out there, maybe even listening right now, who has thought about writing children's books. And so, do you have any like tips on like how to format, you know, how do you start with that, or what is your process? I know everybody's process might be different, but what kind of advice or encouragement would you give to someone listening right now who maybe is thinking about doing that?
Ooh, that's a good question. And it's such a varied answer depending on, you know, the type of book that you're wanting to
Mm-hmm.
write and things like that. But I would say advice that is always given is to read a lot of children's books that are coming out in the past 1 to 3 years to see kind of what the market is and just to have fun. You know, I think that even like you said, as adults, we need ways to bring more fun into our um, walks with God into it's not bad to say I want my walk with God to be fun. I mean, certainly there are parts that, you know, we are persevering, we're serving. It's not all about us, but God wants us to enjoy him. And so, you know, if it's a Christian book that you're looking to write, there are a lot of great ones out there that you could read. Or I would say also read general market books because they're some of the funniest ones, and I can find, if you want in a minute, a little list that I made for another podcast I'm going to be on of some books that I would say are great for all ages. And then another tip I would say is just balance your input and output. So when I first started, that was a mistake I made, is I had this idea and I just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and then I got input. And so I eventually joined SCBWI, which is the Society for Book Writers and Illustrators. I joined book camp. Um, I'm sorry, it's the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. I don't know if I said that correctly because it is specifically for children. And then book camp's more for like that
Mm-hmm.
broader audience. Um, and I got feedback from editors and things like that. But I could have saved myself a lot of time if I'd done that more balanced. If I'd written a little bit and then gotten feedback, written a little bit and then gotten feedback. So I would say that's definitely something I would probably go back and change because it's like, okay, now I have this finished thing. Oh, wait, I need to change a lot of things about this. So, yeah, so that's what I would say. And then just as far as, you know, like I touched for a second on, you know, making your relationship with God fun. I mean, that's something I love about kids and being in the kids book industry is just kids are experts at joy and wonder and curiosity. And so I would say spend some time with kids, you know, and see what it is that lights them up and what they, what they can teach you. They're amazing. And how they get excited about, maybe what we would say is a small thing, we could learn from that and decide like today I'm going to get ridiculously excited about one thing in my day. I don't know what it's going to be, but that is my goal today to get just so excited. And kind of tap into that children's mindset is going to also help your writing, but also just your day.
Hmm. Wow, I love that. And I'm going to just say that again because that's a great tip for all of us that we need to get ridiculously excited about something in our day, like every
Hmm.
day. That's just, it's fun. And when we take that perspective, it kind of gives us like a mind
Right.
shift. Instead of looking at our calendar, we get up in the morning and have our coffee or our tea or whatever we do in the morning, our health shake or whatever. And then we think about all the things on our calendar that day and that we're like, oh man, I don't know, if I can get through the day. And then pick something to be ridiculously excited about.
Hmm.
And it would, yeah. And I love
Yeah.
that. I mean, of course, we can be ridiculously excited about Jesus,
Yes.
which is fun. And just the ways and the divine appointments and how he will use each and every thing that we have on our,
Hmm.
calendar. So,
Right. It goes back to like Thessalonians, right, where it says, give thanks in all circumstances. Our circumstances today, might be mundane or even really, really hard. But, when we
mhm.
are looking for God, He can give us something to be thankful for.
Yeah, amen. I love that very much. It's a great reminder. And also, thank you for mentioning, and I'll put those in the show notes, those places where people can get plugged in. And what great advice to read books in the genre that you want to write in, but also, just expand that horizon a little bit, but also seek wisdom from people who have been there. Don't be afraid to put your writing out there and be open to critiquing because sometimes we can be a little defensive about things, and that could be in anything we do.
Mhm.
If we want to, an idea we have, sometimes we get a little defensive if someone doesn't like our idea or something like that. But we really need to be open. I mean, there's also the kind of critiques that could be more critical
Mhm.
versus helpful. So, just God will give us kind of the discernment about what to receive and to actually take a good hard look at ourselves.
Mhm.
Is it something prideful? Are we just not wanting to be told what to do? Or maybe, it's something where if I do this, it will make it better. And this just kind of work through it
Mhm.
that way. But to work with people who know the industry, and fact being that, whether you are traditionally published, which often takes a lot more time
Mhm.
than self-publish. You can also self-publish, but just thinking along those lines. But be part of communities that can, offer, or even like have your own writing accountability group where
Mhm.
you have writers of different levels or some seasoned writers, some newer
Mhm.
writers, and just share your writing amongst each other and do it that
Right.
way. It might feel a little bit more safe to start
Yes.
that way, even too.
Yes. My first critique group was friends that were teachers, librarians, and children's pastors, who I knew had
Mm-hmm.
maybe they were not professional or aspiring writers, but they had a handle on, like good flow and they knew what was out there in the market and they knew kids. And so that was definitely
Mm-hmm.
my first safe group. And then I kind of branched out to like strangers, like other aspiring writers, and then eventually even paid for some critiques from editors and agents because not because I wanted to hear the hard things, and sometimes it is hard, but because I knew that I wanted this book to serve kids the best way possible. And I didn't take every um, critique or every suggestion, but I took a lot of them because I was like, maybe at first it would be like, what? No. And then I'd think about it and be like, yeah. And just trying to make
Yeah.
that product to serve kids. So definitely get that community. It's important.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you for sharing that about your own experience, because I think that's important. And your books have won awards, and that, that's just confirmation that, not that we just seek to be award-winning authors, but when a book that we've written that we feel like God has helped us get through it, and just sharing his messages and his truth with the world, to be recognized in that way is great. And it affirms the fact being that you've put something of quality out that can really make an impact on others. Because there's a lot of books out there that, because anybody can self-publish a book. So if you are thinking of even doing that on your own, invest a little bit in an editor, someone that can go through it for you, and whether it be a content and grammatical, how do you say that? Grammatical
Yes.
or whatever. Yeah. Thanks, Teach. So just like you want to put quality out there, especially if you're sharing the truth of the Word of God. You don't want it to be distracting in ways that it shouldn't be, and distract from the message because of maybe the way it's written or whatever. So, and not every writer is good at that. And thank the Lord for editors.
Right.
He's equipped people to do that, who love to do that, who are gifted to do that. And that's like their job. So that's great. And then if you are with a traditional publisher, they'll have, editors and have people work with you to get that into fruition. Because I know, like in children's books, there's different guidelines to follow, right? Like how many words to a page, and total word count for an entire book, depending on what level it is. And some are board books, and some are picture books, and some are this and that. There's different types. So to be do your homework.
That's right. I think it was Lisa Turkhurst who said that she, now when you read her writing, you see like maybe some unconventional capitalization and things like that. She's like, but before I could break the rules, I had to follow the rules. And I love that, because I think there is room for innovation. But, even Picasso was like a classically trained artist before he went off and did his, groundbreaking things. So I think that's wise what you're saying, Doris. I love it.
Wow, that's great advice too, and that you brought up Lisa Turker's quote that she shared about that. Before she could break the rules, she had to follow them, or how.
Yeah, it's not. I probably sorry, Lisa. I'm probably butchering that, but
well, that's golden.
Yeah, it was good. That good nugget of truth that like we need each other, and we can innovate, but then it's always helpful to know, like, to have that foundation to innovate on, right?
Yeah, so true. That firm foundation we need, which is, so biblical to have firm foundation, in Jesus and what God is doing in and through our lives. And we're all called to do different things. So, and I think too, the test market of reading it to the kids, because I written, in a Bible study book, but I also have like kids books that I've written, some kids books, and I've got a fiction novel that I've worked on. That was like the very first thing I started working on, was a fiction novel. And it's been, golly, I don't know, did I start that in like 2010 or something? I mean, it's been around a long while sitting on my computer. But I know that I haven't, like, I've more so in the nonfiction arena, have gone to trainings, been part of memberships for writers and those kind of things, conferences, taking classes and doing courses that were kind of all geared toward the nonfiction type genre. So I know that I'm missing a lot for the fiction part or the children's book part. And I need some help with that. Like, I need somebody who knows what they're doing, and people who have been there to kind of look at it and say, well, this is too long, or this doesn't flow, or, like we were saying earlier. So we need people in our lives to look at it, because we might read something we wrote and go, oh, that's pretty good. And then somebody else reads it and goes, I don't get it. I don't quite get what you're trying to say here. So we need clarification on that. And also to, especially writing a novel, there's so many facets. So, we want to make sure that all the loose ends get tied up and nobody's left
Yes.
kind of hanging. It's like, well, whatever happened to this other side subplot? Nothing, you didn't talk anymore about it. And what happened with that? So sometimes we might miss things. So, and I'm kind of like a pantser, I think they call it, where you just kind of let it write itself. By the seat of your pants, just kind of go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I love that. But anyway, well, I am so thankful to have you back on. It's been so fun, Valerie, to revisit and just kind of see what you're up to and all the wonderful things that you've got coming out and what's going on. And if you have like maybe a last bit of encouragement you want to share with the listener today.
Mm-hmm. I would say that when you have kids in your life, they may not be the best at expressing gratitude for the impact you're having in the moment, but to stay with it, because it does make a difference. That investment, in these years, my kids now are 14 and 11. And I feel like I'm definitely in that part where it's like, well, I'm probably not going to see them be like, thanks, Mom, for doing this. Or, I mean, they do say thank you sometimes, but you know what I mean? Like for all the things that I'm doing, but I know that this is a short, precious time. So whether it's in children's ministry, youth ministry, or your grandkids or your kids, or just the neighborhood kids, just know how much it matters, and God sees what you're doing, even when you might not get that thank you from a human person. So
yeah, that's beautiful encouragement right there. It kind of reminded me a little bit about, I had Kate Battistelli on the show just a little while ago, and she said we're raising them to go. So as our kids get older, or our grandkids get older, or, we have friends that have kids and they're kind of struggling in the area of, they're getting older and they're kind of doing their own thing, and they start driving on their own and they don't really need you to ride them anymore. And, things like that. It's different seasons in our lives. And so I love that encouragement that you just gave, that they may not always express what they actually are feeling, and we may never know. Like, sometimes too, which I know my daughter did this, I think it was like an assignment in school or some contest that she entered, and she had to write something about a person that made an impact on her life or something. And she wrote it about me, and then she said all these things, and I'm like, oh, it was so heartwarming. But sometimes it's hard for kids to express, like you said, the gratitude or what they're truly feeling and what their experiences are. And it is kind of fun to ask your kids how they experience different events that had happened in your family, or how they remember or recall different traditions that you did at Christmas and things like that, because different kids will remember different things. And I think that's pretty precious too. So, but anyway, well, thank you so much, Valerie. I would love if you would share, how can the listener connect with you and find all your amazing books and your everyday parables, resources, and those kind of things.
Okay, well, let me start out by saying that each book has an activity pack. And so even if you don't get the books, you can get the resources for free on my website. And so that's valerieellis.com. And then you can go to oureverydayparables.com for book reviews and those how to talk about God in the everyday moment ideas, and just family traditions like you talk about. We talk about Christmas, we talk about back to school, and all of those different seasons. And then I'm on Instagram at I am Valerie Ellis. And so I like to share book news there and also book recommendations. And there was one more thing I wanted to say about school visits. So yes, my website, valerieellis.com, is also where you can learn about school visits, speaking engagements, speak to moms groups like MOPS, and we're now called the MomCo, and conferences and things like that. So I'd love to talk to different groups. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I love how you brought that up about MOPS is now known as MomCo, the MomCo, right?
They did some rebranding because they didn't want to be like a kitchen tool to clean the floor. I get it, but all of us are having a hard time remembering that that's what it's called now.
Yeah. So, because in the original name, it was kind of geared toward preschoolers,
Mm-hmm.
right? But is it that have they expanded on that branding too?
Right. So
Or is it?
they were mothers of preschoolers. That's where the moms came from. And then they had Moms Next when they wanted to expand to moms who, maybe their kids aren't in preschool anymore, but they still want that community. And then they combined all of it into the Mom Co. So any age your kids are, you can
Mm,
find support and community at a group by you. So yeah.
so smart, to do
Yes.
that. So I love that. But anyway, wow. So this has been so fun, and I hope to have you on
Oh,
again
I'm so
because,
excited. Thank you, Doris. It's been a pleasure.
yeah, I know there's going to be more that you've got going on that we'll want to hear about. And thank you so much for listening today. I know what Valerie shared has encouraged you, and please reach out to her if you have any questions about anything discussed in the show. I will have all the links in the show notes so you can find her, reach out to her, and grab her amazing books to give as gifts to keep for your family, and just other resources and ways that you can share the love of Christ with your family and others, and just, continually focus on God. And so I just love that so much. You can also, if you have neighborhood clubs, there's a lot of clubs out there. I kind of think about the Good News Club and that kind of thing. They have their own curriculum and all, but some families have started like clubs in their backyard and those kind of things. So this would be perfect, some of these resources to use for that. And friends, I hope you'll join me next time when I talk with another guest who's taking action where her passion, compassion, and conviction intersect. Until then, friends, have a blessed week, and I will talk to you soon.